Have you ever woken up to a silence in your home that feels heavy? A quiet so complete that you notice the hum of the refrigerator for the first time in years? Most of us simply call this loneliness. But as a doctor, I have to tell you, it's far more dangerous than just an emotion. Shocking research from respected institutions like Brigham Young University has shown that chronic loneliness can be as damaging to your physical health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It can increase your risk of heart disease by nearly 30%, and the risk of dementia by a staggering 50%. That silence you're hearing isn't just empty. It is a genuine health risk, hiding in plain sight. But, and this is a truth I've learned not from textbooks, but from sitting with my patients for decades. What if I told you that for many men, that exact same silence isn't a life sentence? What if it's actually an opportunity? A quiet path leading not to bitterness, but to a kind of profound peace you may not have felt in years. I'm not talking about theory. I'm talking about reality. I want to tell you about a patient of mine, a good man we'll call Arthur. He's a 75-year-old former auto worker. After his wife passed and the kids had long since built their own lives, his house fell silent. And those first few months, they were brutal. But what he eventually discovered in that quiet changed everything. In this video, we are going to walk through the 5 honest truths that Arthur's journey taught us about men who age alone. These are practical ways to find strength in solitude, and to protect both your spirit and your health. And I truly urge you to stay with me until the very end. The 5th and most important truth finally answers that unspoken question everyone is afraid to ask. Aren't you afraid of dying alone? Arthur's answer wasn't what anyone expected, and I believe understanding it might just change how you view the rest of your life. My name is Dr. Callahan, and for over 30 years, as a physician specializing in geriatric care, my work has been dedicated to helping people navigate the challenges and joys of aging. The advice I share today comes directly from the lives and stories of hundreds of patients I've been privileged to know. Before we dive in, I truly want to know how many of us have felt this. If that feeling of a heavy silence I described feels familiar to you, please take a moment to comment with a simple yes below. It helps me understand, and more importantly, it shows others in our community that they are not alone. Okay, let's begin. Alright, now we will move into the first of the 5 honest truths. Truth number 1. Freedom after roles fade. For so many men of a certain generation, their identity is like a coat they've worn for 50 years. It's woven from the titles they held: husband, father, provider. After a lifetime of rising before dawn, of paying every bill on time, of being the steady rock everyone else leaned on, a day comes when those roles simply fall away. The job ends. The children are grown. The house is paid off. And a man is left standing in the quiet, asking himself a terrifying question. Who am I now? This isn't just a feeling. Psychologists call it a role loss crisis. Our sense of self-worth becomes so deeply entangled with what we do for others that when the doing stops, our value feels like it has vanished. It's a profound emptiness that so many of my patients describe. They wake up in the morning without a clear purpose, a feeling of being invisible, and they wonder, what's the point? This is especially true for men from a generation taught that a man's worth is measured by his reliability. Love wasn't about flowery words. It was about a full tank of gas in the car, a fixed faucet, and a paycheck on the table every Friday. This was Arthur's entire world. For 40 years as a factory supervisor, he was the definition of dependable. He told me that after his wife passed, the hardest part wasn't just the loneliness. It was the sudden lack of purpose. He felt, in his own words, like an empty shell. He would walk through the house he'd worked his whole life to pay for, and feel like a ghost in it. He once confessed to me, "Doc, for the first time in my life, nobody needs me for anything." And that thought was crushing him. It was in that moment, sitting in my office, that he asked the question that would change everything for him. Who am I when I'm no longer living for someone else? At first, the question was frightening. But over time, it became an invitation. The solution to this profound crisis doesn't come from some grand gesture. It begins with small, almost trivial acts of self-reclamation. This is what I advised Arthur to do. I told him, start by taking back the little decisions. And he did. He started brewing his coffee strong and black, exactly the way he liked it, not the weaker brew his wife had preferred. A simple thing. He moved his favorite armchair from the dark corner to the big window where the afternoon sun streamed in. Another simple thing. He started reading the dusty history books on his shelf that he'd always dismissed as too slow. These weren't grand acts of reinvention. They were quiet declarations that his life, finally, belonged to him. It wasn't selfish. It was a necessary act of survival. A way to rediscover the man who existed underneath all the roles he had played. So, I urge you, stop living entirely on the autopilot of old routines. Start by asking yourself this simple question each morning. Today, what is one small thing that I truly want to do? That is the first step away from emptiness and towards authenticity. It's the beginning of freedom. If you understand the incredible value of finding yourself again after a lifetime of service to others, please take a moment to comment with the word freedom below. Truth number 2. Silence that both hurts and teaches. When the noise of a busy life finally fades, what's left behind is silence. And in the beginning, for a man living alone, that silence is not a friend. It's a tormentor. It echoes in the empty spaces, amplifying the loss, making every solitary meal feel like a judgment. Our brains are biologically wired for social connection. Decades of research, including studies published in the journal Heart, show that prolonged social isolation can trigger a chronic stress response in the body, releasing cortisol that strains the heart and weakens the immune system. The silence isn't just in your head. Your body feels it as a physical threat. This experience is often intensified as we age. For some, hearing may begin to decline slightly, which deepens the sense of being cut off from the world, making the silence feel even more absolute and isolating. The common symptoms are a restless feeling you can't shake, difficulty sleeping through the night, and an almost compulsive need to fill the quiet with noise from the television or radio. It becomes a constant companion, a low-grade hum of anxiety. Arthur knew this feeling intimately. He told me the evenings were the worst. He'd sit at his kitchen table, where for 40 years someone had sat across from him, and the quiet was deafening. He tried leaving the oldies station on the radio, but he said it was just noise, not presence. It couldn't replace the simple sound of his name being called from another room. And that's when he had a profound realization, one he shared with me that I've never forgotten. He said, "Doc, I realized loneliness isn't just the absence of people. It's the absence of being seen. The instinct is to run from this feeling, to fill every waking moment with distraction. But the healing comes from doing the exact opposite. You must learn to sit with the silence. You have to face it." I encouraged Arthur not to flee from it, but to try to change his relationship with it. He started with a small, simple ritual. One night, instead of eating under the harsh kitchen light, he lit a single candle on the table. The soft, flickering light didn't fill the silence, but it changed its character. It made the quiet feel softer, more gentle. Another evening, he took his plate to the window and watched the sunset as he ate. Slowly, painstakingly, the silence began to transform from an enemy into a companion. It became a space for reflection, for memory, for gratitude. It stopped being an emptiness and started to feel like a presence. It was in that quiet that he finally began to hear his own voice again. So tonight, I challenge you to try this, just for 5 minutes. Turn off the television. Sit in a comfortable chair. And just listen. Listen to the sounds of your home. Listen to your own breathing. Begin the process of turning silence from something you fear into something that can teach you. This might sound surprising. I know if you're amazed by the hidden power of truly embracing the quiet, comment with the word "wow" below. Truth number 3. The changing shape of connection. There comes a time for many older men living alone when the phone doesn't ring as often as it used to. The Sunday calls from the kids become quick, hurried text messages. The visits, once regular, become squeezed in between their own family's busy schedules. It's one of the most painful transitions of aging, and it's easy for it to curdle into bitterness. It's a feeling of being left behind, of being forgotten. This isn't just paranoia. There's a scientific basis for this feeling. Psychologically, it's a mismatch of expectations. Our need for connection, especially as our social world shrinks, remains high. But the lives of our adult children are often at their peak of complexity, filled with careers and their own kids' activities. The gap between our expectations and their reality can create a deep sense of disappointment and even resentment. This is made worse by the simple fact that the world communicates differently now. For a generation that grew up with the telephone as the primary link to loved ones, a text message can feel impersonal, even dismissive. This technological and generational gap can make a man feel even more isolated, like he's speaking a different language than the rest of his family. The common symptoms are constantly checking your phone for messages that aren't there, feeling a pang of sadness when you see other families together, and hesitating to call your own children because you don't want to be a burden or sound needy. Arthur felt this ache deeply. His daughter, Sarah, lived 3 states away, and her Sunday calls had been his anchor. When they started becoming less frequent, his heart sank. He confessed to me that he felt a bitterness creeping in, a voice in his head telling him he'd been replaced. But Arthur is a wise man, and he knew that bitterness would only build a wall around his heart. So he chose a different path. He did something wonderfully old-fashioned. He started writing letters. Real letters, with a pen and paper. He wrote to Sarah not about his loneliness, but about the blue jay that visited his bird feeder every morning. He wrote to his son, Michael, about finally fixing his old record player. He didn't always mail them. Sometimes, just the act of putting his thoughts and love onto paper was enough. He wasn't demanding a response. He was simply sending his connection out into the world. This is the crucial shift in perspective. You must redefine what connection means. Stop measuring love by the frequency of phone calls. Connection can take quieter, more subtle forms. It can be found in the act of giving without expecting anything in return. My advice is this: find a way to send your love outward. Write that letter. Send that birthday card a week early. Send a text message with a simple, "Thinking of you today and hoping you have a good day." This act releases you from the painful trap of waiting for the phone to ring. It empowers you. It allows you to feel connected on your own terms, finding peace in the giving, not just the receiving. Truth number 4. Peace without performance. Our society often looks at an older man living alone and sees a tragedy. A neighbor might say with a pitying smile, "It must be so hard without anyone." A well-meaning relative might joke, "You should get back out there, find some company." They see solitude as failure. But what these people fail to understand is one of the most profound truths of aging alone: the incredible peace that comes when you no longer have to perform. For decades, many men have lived in a state of what psychologists call emotional labor. They've had to perform the role of the steady, untroubled husband, the patient father. They smiled when they were tired, they nodded in agreement to keep the peace, and they swallowed their own frustrations to maintain household harmony. This constant performance is exhausting. As we age, our tolerance for it plummets. After a lifetime of shaping yourself to be easier for others to live with, the need to simply be authentic becomes overwhelming. The symptoms of this lifetime of performance are a deep weariness with social gatherings, a lack of patience for small talk, and a powerful desire to just be left alone in your own space, on your own schedule. It's not about being antisocial. It's about being tired of the act. Arthur explained this to me more clearly than any textbook ever could. He said people were always telling him he must be lonely. He would just smile and nod. But he told me, "Doc, you have no idea what it was like. The worst loneliness I ever felt wasn't in this empty house. It was lying in bed next to someone who hadn't truly seen me in 20 years. It was eating dinner in a tense silence where every word had to be carefully measured." For Arthur, living alone wasn't a punishment. It was a release. For the first time in his adult life, there was no performance. He could wake up when he wanted, eat what he wanted, and if he didn't feel like talking, the silence carried no judgment. His solitude wasn't a prison. It was a sanctuary of honesty. This is the peace he had found. It wasn't that he was closing his heart to love, but he was closing the stage where he had performed for so long. The solution here is to give yourself permission to enjoy this peace. You have earned it. Stop worrying about what others think about your life. Stop feeling guilty for enjoying your own company. Protecting your peace is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of profound self-respect. Embrace the freedom to be unapologetically yourself. Eat cereal for dinner. Watch the same movie 3 times in a row. Let the silence be a comfortable blanket, not a heavy weight. It is a dignity you have earned. If you believe that peace is a form of strength, take a moment and comment with the single word peace. Truth number 5. The real fear isn't dying alone. Sooner or later, the question always comes. It might be whispered gently by a concerned friend or asked bluntly at a family gathering. Aren't you afraid of dying alone? It's the ultimate fear society projects onto those who live by themselves in their later years. It hangs in the air, a vision of a lonely, unattended end. And of course, on a practical level, there are concerns about safety. What if I fall? Who will know? But as I've listened to men like Arthur over the years, I've come to understand that this question misses the point entirely. It focuses on the final moment, while ignoring the entire life that precedes it. From a psychological perspective, particularly through the lens of existential psychology, the fear of death is often a proxy for a deeper fear, the fear of an unlived life. The terror isn't about the final breath. It's about looking back and realizing your life was meaningless or, worse, that you were never truly known. When you get older, the fundamental question shifts from "how will I die?" to "how have I lived?" The symptom of this deeper fear isn't just a practical worry about being found. It's a profound, quiet sadness that you were never fully understood, even by those closest to you. It's the ache of a lifetime of unspoken thoughts and silenced feelings. I once asked Arthur this question directly. He smiled, took a slow sip of his coffee, and gave me an answer that has stayed with me ever since. He looked at me and said, "Doc, I'm not afraid of dying alone. What I was afraid of was living unseen." He explained that his loneliest moments were not in his quiet little house. They were in a crowded room or lying in bed next to someone, feeling completely and utterly invisible. His fear was of going through his days as a shadow in his own home. His presence expected but his heart completely unnoticed. That, he said, was a fate far heavier than dying peacefully in his favorite chair. That was the real tragedy he had spent a lifetime trying to avoid repeating. Living unseen, unheard, unrecognized. The ultimate solution to this fear, then, is not to find someone to be there at the end. The solution is to live authentically every single day you have left. Choose yourself. Speak your mind, kindly but clearly. Pursue a hobby that brings you joy, no matter how silly it might seem to others. The goal is to live in such a way that you, yourself, see and honor the person you truly are. By choosing a life of peaceful solitude over a life of performative companionship, Arthur wasn't rejecting love. He was choosing dignity. He was refusing to be invisible any longer. So, let go of the fear of that final day. Instead, focus on this one. Live today in a way that makes you feel seen, heard, and known by the most important person of all, yourself. So, what became of Arthur? Where is he now? Well, he still lives alone in that same small house. But the feeling inside those walls has been completely transformed. The rooms are no longer heavy with a punishing silence. Instead, they are filled with a quiet, steady peace. By walking through these honest truths, he learned to trade the emptiness of lost roles for the freedom of being himself. He chose dignity over despair. Most importantly, he chose to belong to himself. Arthur's journey teaches us a powerful and often unspoken truth about growing older. Living alone in old age is not automatically a tragedy. It is not a sign of failure. Sometimes, it is the very first time a man has been truly, authentically free. We've learned that the silence that once wounded him became a teacher. That connection can change its shape, but it never has to disappear. And we've faced the deepest truth of all, a truth Arthur now lives by every day. The greatest fear was never about dying alone. The real tragedy, the one he escaped, is living an entire life as a shadow in your own home, invisible to those you love most. As we come to a close, we've explored these 5 critical realities that can truly transform our golden years. But as I always say in my practice, knowledge is only powerful when we put it into action. So now, I have one important question for you. What is the one small commitment you are making to yourself this week after watching this video? It could be as simple as, I will light a candle during dinner, or I will write that letter I've been thinking about. Maybe it's just, I will sit in the quiet for 5 minutes, without the TV on. Please, share your personal commitment in the comments below. It's a powerful way to make a promise to yourself, and it lets others in our community know they are not alone in taking that first step. And if you found real value and a sense of comfort in our time together, show your support by giving this video a like. To ensure you continue on this journey with us and never miss another video full of life-changing wisdom, please hit that subscribe button. It's more than just subscribing. It's joining a community of people dedicated to navigating our later years with strength and with dignity. Finally, think of one person who needs to hear this message today. Perhaps a friend, a brother, or your own father. Please share it with them. You might just bring a little light into their quiet home. Remember, peace is not loneliness. Peace is home.